Hey everyone, how's it going? Phelan here. Just gonna be talking about my first impressions of Mina the Hollower. We just recently got the demo for the game here on. I think the demo's available on all major platforms, but I know for a fact it's available on Nintendo Switch too, which by the way is how I played it for this video and for my first impressions here. And yeah, I just wanted to come on here and just kind of talk about what I thought of the game after playing the demo. Now, for those that don't know, Mina the Hollower is an indie game developed by Yacht Club Games, the same developers of Shovel Knight, that is slated for release later this year on Halloween. And to be honest, so just so y'all have an idea of where I'm coming from as, as I give my impressions on this game. I wanted to play this game for one reason, and one reason only, and it's because the main character's name is Mina, which is also the name of my fiance. So, I think, some people might find that to be a very shallow reason, but what can I say? She's the love of my life, so... Anyway, so, I mean, that's what I really wanted to play it, but, then we find out more about the game. We find out that it's being developed by Yacht Club Games, again, same developers as Shovel Knight, and kind of right then and there, I'm like, okay, well, that pretty much makes this a guaranteed purchase, doesn't it? Now, I say that. I actually haven't played Shovel Knight. I know, please don't throw the tomatoes, but... I've played like the first couple levels with a friend one time we were hanging out, but that's really about it, and that's definitely something I need to fix at some point, because it's definitely a really cool game. But I wanted to explain all that to kind of give y'all an idea of where I'm coming from as I give these impressions, that, I don't really have the Shovel Knight experience like I'm sure most people would jumping into this game. So, kind of is what it is. But Mina the Hollower, it's Yacht Club's new game. And they're taking a different approach. Shovel Knight was kind of like an NES-inspired platformer, side-scrolling platformer game. With Mina the Hollower, they're taking a bit of a different approach. Maybe this is watering it down a little bit too much, but if Shovel Knight is Yacht Club's Mario, then Mina is Yacht Club's Zelda. And you'll definitely see that as you start seeing, if you're looking at the gameplay. You can kind of definitely get those vibes. It's kind of got that top-down perspective like old 2D Zelda games. So it kind of wears its inspiration on its sleeve in that regard. But I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just, it's pretty easy to see some of the inspirations. But, of course, it's not just 2D Zelda. There's a little bit of Castlevania in there. There's a little bit of Bloodborne in there even, which is all kind of cool. And it's kind of funny. So I'm playing this demo. And I'm seeing this, and I did a little bit of research on the game as well before this video, before playing the demo. And I was like, okay, I can definitely see all of these things, but I'm sitting here and I'm realizing, I've not played a lot of 2D Zelda. I've not played any Castlevania, and I've not played any Souls-like games. So this is almost kind of like completely new territory for me. Which, I don't know, I think is kind of funny. But either way, like I said, it wears its inspirations on its sleeve, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because it still does a lot of its own stuff. It's got its own style. But let's go ahead and talk about the game proper. Most of my impressions are really just going to be focused on the gameplay. There are a few story elements in the game, but to be honest, I'm not going to spend too much time on that, as, I think the purpose of a demo is for you to get an idea for how a game plays. And, if we want to talk story, we can, talk that when the game comes out. It'll be a much fuller conversation by that time anyway. And, so the game really pays homage to specifically the Game Boy. Some of the developers have kind of come out and said that was kind of the big thing they were trying to emulate here, was the feeling of the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color. And as far as the aesthetics goes, you can definitely see that just by looking at the game. They really commit to this, right? If you had told me that this was some lost gem on the Game Boy Color that nobody knew about, You show me gameplay of this and just tell me it's a Game Boy Color game, like, I'd believe you. Like, I mean, they really, like, commit to the aesthetic, and that gets nothing but props from me. Like, it's, I don't know, there's something about the way that Game Boy Color games looked around this time, or around that time, you know what I'm saying? So, like, Link's Awakening DX, the Oracle of Seasons and Ages, Pokemon Generation 2. Like, Game Boy games just have... I can't really explain it beyond, they just have that aesthetic, you know? I think people that have played a lot of Game Boy games are probably going to know what I mean, but yeah, they commit to that, and it just... Man, this game looks incredible. I love it. And, you know... I wasn't really expecting anything less. Again, this is the Shovel Knight developers, and Shovel Knight also is a great-looking game of pixel art. So, not really surprising, but I wanted to give the graphics its flowers. And I especially love that the game, like, despite being in, like, a gothic setting, akin to something you might see in, like, Bloodborne, the game still manages to be, like, really colorful, which I find notable. I don't know why, like, I feel like those gothic settings are kind of difficult to not look muted and kind of gray, and, you know, obviously that's kind of the point to a degree, but I appreciate that Mina the Hollower, despite that setting, is still very colorful. I appreciate that a lot. And, you know, I guess real quick we could talk the music as well. Holy shit. So, the game is composed by Jake Kaufman. This is a name that I'm familiar with. I have heard his name around quite a bit. It just turns out that most of the games he's composed are games I have not played, things like the Shantae series, stuff like that. So I've always heard people say that, like, yeah, Jake Kaufman soundtracks are, like, really good, he makes great music, but I haven't really played any game that features him as a composer until trying out this demo. And, just, wow. I don't really have much more to say to it than that. There's not a ton of musical pieces in the demo, but when you get to the Blighted Docks, essentially, you know, the entire level that the demo takes place in, my god, that song is going to be stuck in my head for, like, months. Like, I've already, like, you hear the song in the trailer that they had for the Indie World, and I watched that trailer, and, like, all week since watching that trailer, I've just been humming this song. Like, it's very good. It's really good stuff. I like it a lot. And, you know, if I can expect more of this from the soundtrack in the final release, then this might go down as possibly one of my favorite gaming soundtracks of the year. Of course, Mario Kart World came out this year, and that's kind of hard to compete with. I understand that, but, you know, either way. I was impressed. It's good stuff, and I'm looking forward to hearing more when the game fully releases. So yeah, like I said, let's jump into the game proper here. One thing that I noticed right away about this game, and it's something that I love, and also is, like, slightly concerning, I suppose, from a critical perspective. This game does not waste any of your goddamn time trying to get into the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, you get the opening cutscene kind of explaining why Mina's on the ship, why she's going to go help out this town or whatever. And then after that, they just throw you into the game. Like, you spend a couple seconds, literally a couple seconds on that ship, it's immediately attacked, and you're in the game. And, you know, I love that brevity from games, right? I'm not really one that enjoys kind of building things up with story sequences or whatever. I suppose my only exception to that is, like, with RPGs, because that's kind of what you have to do in an RPG, but, like, for an action game like this, I really appreciate that they just don't waste any time and get you right into the action. I absolutely love that. But it does get to a point where it's like, the brevity is nice, but this also, like, and, you know, I suppose this also kind of goes back to that whole Game Boy aesthetic. This also goes as far as not explaining game mechanics. They just kind of throw you in. They don't tell you what any of the buttons do. They don't tell you what any of your mechanics do. They don't tell you what any of the items you're picking up do. No, they just throw you in, and they say, all right, there you go. Now, to be fair, the game in the options menu does have a manual. They put an actual manual in the options menu, and I didn't get any footage of it, but I went and looked at it after I was done recording, and there is actually a lot of helpful tips in there. So if you find yourself struggling with the game or with the demo, you know, maybe you're not quite grasping the controls, or maybe you don't know what something does, there is a manual in the game that kind of tells you all that. Again, sort of harkening back to that whole Game Boy era, because, you know, back then games shipped with actual manuals. Which admittedly, once I started going through it, it was kind of nostalgic, I can't lie. Because I didn't grow up on the Game Boy Color, but I sure as hell grew up with the Game Boy Advance, and I was in and out of game manuals all the time, mostly just to look at the cool artwork, I'll be honest with you, but yeah, I don't know, you know, despite the fact that it was a digital manual that I had to access from the options menu, it was still kind of nostalgic, because they still have that artistic flair to it, where it's just like, yeah, it's not just like text, you know, like, they're using cool fonts, they've got pictures of the game, they're like having fun with the writing of it. It's really charming. So, you know, if you're struggling with anything in the game, understand that they got you covered. They got you covered. There's a manual. Check it out. Trust me, it's got some useful tips in there. That being said, like I said, I read the manual after I played the demo. So I ended up figuring everything out on my own, which wasn't too bad. Even if you take that approach, it's not going to take you too long to figure out what everything does, right? It's not going to take you long to figure out what all the pickups do. It's not going to take you very long to figure out how burrowing works, and you know, the kind of limitations you have with jumping, how your weapons work, how sub-weapons work, stuff of that nature. I think if you're at the very least familiar with some of the games that Mina takes inspiration from, I don't really think you're going to have a problem jumping in. You may have to kind of play around with things a little bit, do some experimentation. That's definitely what I did, right? There were a lot of moments where I was experimenting, like, okay, can I do this here? Can I do that there? And again, you know, I think that does kind of lend itself, again, harkening back to that whole Game Boy aesthetic, where it's like, yeah, if you bought a used Game Boy game, you didn't have the manual, right? So you just kind of had to figure everything out on your own. And I know I definitely did a lot of that as a kid with some of the Game Boy Advance games I got. So, you know, for me in that way, it was nostalgic. I can understand how some people might find that a bit intrusive, but I don't know. For me, I'm all about that kind of stuff. So yeah, like I said, it's very like 2D Zelda in the way it plays. Again, if you look at the gameplay, you can kind of see that, where you got this top-down view, you can kind of walk around in like 8 directions and such, and you're attacking things. One thing that I found really off-putting, and I guess this is just more of a me thing, being used to newer games, is that like you can move in 8 directions, but you can't attack in 8 directions, and it's just weird. It kept throwing me off, and I get that's part of the point, right? Because when you go to, you know, old games of this style, you couldn't attack in 8 directions in those games either, right? So I think that's just me just like being used to a newer convention and having to kind of rework my brain just a little bit to accompany the fact that I'm playing something that's trying to emulate an older style. And it, you know, it's something you get used to in time, but it just kept throwing me off. But, you know, we could dive into the combat a little bit more. So I was surprised at the start of the game, they actually give you a choice of weapon, right? You have a main weapon. You can choose between daggers, which they have short range, but, you know, you can attack with them really quickly. You've got a hammer, which you can't strike with as quickly, but you can charge it up and you get a lot of damage out of it. And you also have the mace, which is kind of akin to like a Castlevania vampire killer, you know, like a whip that you can attack from a distance. And I was actually surprised to see that. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like I haven't been keeping up with this game a ton outside of its initial announcement. So all I knew about the game was that you attack with a whip, and I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. So when the game was like, yeah, pick a weapon, and I was like, oh, there's way more here than I thought. So I went with the whip for my playthrough of the demo. I haven't done a playthrough with the other weapons yet. I only had time to get one run in for now, but I'm definitely going to be revisiting the demo and trying out some other weapons. So I'm really looking forward to that. And hey, replayability from a demo, that's already a good sign. You know, you love to see that. If the demo's replayable, the game probably will be. So looking forward to that. But I went with the whip, you know, it's what I was expecting, and I also am the kind of person that likes to deal with things from a distance if I can. So that just kind of worked for me. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. Attacking feels good. Like I said, like once you kind of get used to the fact that you're not going to have 8-way attacking, like it's not too bad. Requires a little bit of positioning, requires a little bit of, you know, you can't just run in with reckless abandon like you can in some games of this nature. Like they definitely are like, hey, you're gonna have to be competent. You know, you're gonna have to be capable to kind of get through some enemies, and especially some of the boss fights, which I gotta be honest, I got stuck on the mini boss. So in the demo, you get the one level, and then the one level has a mini boss, and it has a boss at the very end. And you get like a good hour out of it. Like my first run through this demo, so far my only run through the demo, was like about an hour long, and that was with me dying a couple times because I was really struggling with the mini boss for some reason. But I think that's because I probably wasn't using Mina's trademark, what I'm calling trademark anyway, burrowing technique, which I think is where this game really shines, where it really gets its identity. When you jump into the air, if you hold down the jump button, when you land, Mina will dig into the ground. And when you're burrowing, you move faster. Once you surface from the ground, you jump farther than you normally would. And most importantly, you can use that technique to avoid taking damage from enemies. You can use it to avoid enemy attacks. Which is, it is a little weird at first, right? Because you kind of you gotta jump first, you gotta hold down the button, and then she starts burrowing. So like, when you're activating it in that way, there's gonna be like a bit of a wind-up that's gonna take some getting used to. So I was fighting the bosses, and I was like, okay, I gotta burrow to avoid the attack here, but, you know, I wasn't accounting for the time I'd spend in the air before jumping into the ground. And so, you know, I'm taking pot shots here and there. So it does take some getting used to, but once you kind of get a feel for it, it's like, oh, this game is sick. Like, like that, like when I finally got a hang of it, when I was like doing long jumps with it, when I was picking up items with it, when I was avoiding attacks from the bosses with it, it just was like the game like opened up. I was like, oh shit, like this is a video game. Let's do this, man. Like, it was so much fun. It was very satisfying. So I'm really excited to see what other ways they use this mechanic in the full release. And the demo does a good job of showing you, like, just some of the baseline ideas they had with it, right? Like, there are certain areas that, like, are blocked off. You can only get there by burrowing under a wall and, like, getting to it that way. Again, that's how you pick up items. You can jump farther with it. You can avoid enemy attacks. All this kind of good stuff. There are, like, secret passageways that, like, if you have a keen eye, you can only get to by burrowing. And it's like, oh, dude, I love this. Like, I don't know, this mechanic is just so cool. And like I said, I am, like, so excited to see how they use it in the rest of the game. Because I have a feeling I'm gonna have a lot of fun with it. And, you know, like I said, it was just one of those things where it's just like, the more you do it, the more sense it makes, the better it feels, and the better you get at it, and you're just like, oh yeah, dude, this is sick. This is sick. I like this. So, yeah, overall really cool stuff. I suppose another thing I should mention, and we'll probably wrap this up here in just a bit, just wanted to sit here and talk for a little bit, is, you know, those are some of the Zelda and Castlevania likenesses that, you know, I was able to spot, which those are easier for me to spot, despite the fact that I have not played those games a whole bunch. Like, I've like sampled Castlevania 1. I've played a little bit of 2D Zelda throughout my life. But the elements that were a little bit more like, okay, I have to like sit here and understand this a little bit, were more of like the Souls-like elements. So things like, because this does take inspiration from games like Dark Souls and Bloodborne and stuff like that, where the currency you get, bones, you know, if you die, you can lose those. And that's also like your experience points. So like when you get enough bones, you know, very, very Zelda 2-like, when you get enough bones, the game is like, hey, you can level something up. So it like stops everything. It's just like, hey, you can level something up. Again, very similar to Zelda 2 on the NES. If you've ever played that, once you get enough experience points, the game stops and says, hey, you know, you can level up your damage, or you can level up your magic, or your defenses, or whatever. Mina has a similar mechanic. So like once you collect 350 bones, the game stops and says, hey, you know, do you want to level up your damage? Do you want to level up the damage for your sub-weapons, which is another Castlevania element that they kind of pull from, which I appreciate a lot, actually. We'll talk about that here in a second. You know, you can level up your defenses and stuff like that, or you can convert them to, like, I think I called it bone dust or bone gems or something like that. Essentially a way for you to not lose that currency if you end up dying in the level, which is super cool. I like that they take these elements from the Souls games, right? Which can be like daunting if you've never played them. Which I again, it's a series that I haven't really played. Like I sampled Dark Souls Remastered when it came out on Switch, but I didn't really go further than that. I played like maybe 2 hours of it. But it's like, if you haven't played a Souls-like game, they're kind of daunting, where it's like, okay, yeah, the game is really hard. Like, you know, the combat asks a lot of you, more than most games would. If you die, you lose, you know, you lose your experience points / money, because it's the same thing. And you only have like a limited number of heals and stuff like that. And Mina the Hollower carries over a lot of that stuff, right? So you have limited healing items in the game until you know, reach certain checkpoints and stuff like that. So you have limited healing items. You have the mechanic where if you die, you lose all of your bones, sort of. The game kind of is a little bit more lenient than Souls-likes, where it's like, you know, in Bloodborne or Dark Souls, if you die, you lose all your souls, and you have to go back and try to retrieve them without dying, and if you do die, you lose them forever. Mina the Hollower tackles that a little bit differently, where you have what's known as a spark. So when you die the first time, you lose the spark. It goes to whatever enemy killed you, or it, you know, it lands somewhere, like if you died to a bottomless pit or something, you know, it lands right there next to that bottomless pit, and you have to retrieve it, similar to, you know, kind of how Dark Souls works in that way. But if you die before retrieving it, you lose the bones you have. So if you die the first time, you get to keep the bones, which means it's like, hey, you still have the chance to use those for items or for level ups and stuff like that. But it's if you die the second time, that's when you lose it all. That's when you lose everything and you get sent back to the most recent checkpoint. So I like that they take those conventions and kind of change it up a little bit, just to make it a little less punishing than I think Dark Souls games kind of are. So yeah, I think it's kind of interesting, all things together, or all things considered. And yeah, I don't know, it's like a weird, I know I've mentioned a lot of like 2D Zelda, Castlevania, Souls, like it's like a weird mishmash of those games while being its own thing entirely. And it's like, it's such an interesting combination of like gameplay mechanics, but like it just works. Like it just works so well. And like, you know, you're gonna have those moments of being like, oh my god, I can't get past this, or this enemy's giving me trouble, this platforming section's giving me trouble, this boss is kicking my ass. Like, you're gonna have those moments, but like, when you get past them, when you finally beat those challenges, it's just like, yes, I love that. Like it's just very satisfying. So I think that's all I wanted to say. Like I said, I just wanted to give some initial impressions. To be honest, I'm eyeing the potential of doing a full review when the game comes out later this year for Halloween. You know, similar to my Mario Cement Factory and Mario Brothers video, just kind of reviewing the game and talking about it in its totality. So if that's something y'all are interested in, definitely let me know in the comments below. But either way, yeah, I just wanted to kind of sit here and yap about the game, yap about the demo for a little bit, and talk about the things that I really liked about it. Because there is a lot to like about this game. I think Yacht Club has something really special here, which, I mean, come on, I think we were all kind of expecting this to be pretty good. Again, these are the Shovel Knight developers. They've proven time and again that they know how to make fun video games, even though I have not played Shovel Knight. Yeah, like I said, I played this and had a good time. If you're interested, again, they have a demo available. It's a limited time demo. It's only available until August 21st. So if you're interested, download it on whatever platform you have and give it a go. I think you'll like it. I liked it a lot. I had a good time with it, and I hope you all do as well. So that's gonna be it from me. Thank you all for listening to me yap. Super Mario Brothers video is it's in the works. I just finished the recording, so I'm working on scripting, and that video should be coming out here soon. So hope you're looking forward to that. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and I will see y'all in the next video. See you later.